The year was 2015. For the past 10 years after the release of Resident Evil 4 in 2005, the Resident Evil community had been let down by nothing but disappointment after disappointment. Fans of the once beloved survival horror franchise were tired of the over-the-top action and lack of horror in recent installments. People were craving a return to the slow-paced single-player horror of the past, and so when Capcom were about to announce their next installment in the Resident Evil franchise at the 2015 Tokyo Game Show, everyone had their fingers crossed. So what was this new installment, and would it finally be what the fans had wanted all this time? Well...
Oh no, the birds are gonna kill me. Oh my god. What? What? This game sucks, dude. This game's garbage.
We're fucking stupid and we bought Umbrella Corp. Alright, there you go. I don't know what the fucking title of this video. World's worst war crime that I probably committed is buying this fucking game.
Umbrella Corps is a game so miserable that you couldn't find a multiplayer lobby to play in on its release day. It's a game that I bought for $1 during a sale, and I think I overpaid.
I went in with low expectations and still somehow had to dig a 6-foot hole to bury them deeper.
Capcom's smartest move with this game was scrubbing it of the Resident Evil name.
The game is split into two parts. The first is a small single-player portion of the game known as The Experiment. This is not a fully fledged single-player campaign by any means, rather it's a small collection of challenge missions taking place on multiplayer maps, and it serves more as a tutorial for the game's mechanics more than anything else. The Experiment doesn't offer much in terms of lore and story either, but what little it does have will be discussed in the next portion of the video. The multiplayer portion, however, being the main part of the game, does have some interesting and unique features to offer. The multiplayer is a competitive PvP experience. The matches are based on one-life rounds, similar to something like Counter-Strike. The maps are all small and densely packed, and are all based on different iconic locations from the Resident Evil games throughout the years. The mechanic that sets the game apart from its competitors is that every map is filled with zombies. However, these zombies doesn't attack you outright, instead every player is equipped with a zombie jammer on their back. This jammer can be destroyed by an enemy player if he shoots at it, making all the zombies around you become hostile and attack you until you die. That makes aiming for the head not always the smartest move. Instead, shooting out the zombie jammer and staying back while your opponent fights zombies is a viable tactic, giving the game some diversity in terms of the tactics you have at your disposal. Being a game focused on PvP multiplayer, Umbrella Corps is very light in terms of its story. However, it does come with a basic premise that is split into two parts. The previously mentioned single-player aspect takes place in the years 2012 and 2013 and follows an agent of the Umbrella Corporation simply known by his codename 3A7. 3A7 gets sent out on various missions by his superior with the goal of testing out different forms of equipment. Later on in the game, said superior attempts to get rid of 3A7 by sending him on what's essentially suicide missions. However, the agent ends up overcoming every challenge that he gets faced with and eventually scaring his superior. The multiplayer portion takes place in 2016, 3 years after Resident Evil 6 and 13 years after the collapse of the Umbrella Corporation. The game sees 10 new corporations, all seeking to recover bioweapon research that has been left behind by the Umbrella Corporation. A lot of said research is found in zombie-infested areas, leaving the corporations to send in groups of mercenaries to recover them. Said mercenary groups often end up clashing with one another at these locations, leading to the battles that you play in the game. Upon its release, Umbrella Corps got extremely negative reviews from both critics and players alike. But to understand how we ended up in this mess, let's first have a quick look back at how the series ended up here. In the year 2004, Capcom released the fourth main installment in the Resident Evil series. This game was very much different from everything we'd previously seen from the franchise. The game now focused on a third-person camera perspective instead of the fixed camera angle of the previous installments. Also, unlike previous installments, the game threw out almost every semblance of horror, instead focusing entirely on more action-packed gameplay and over-the-top cutscenes. You might have assumed that this wouldn't be what the fans of the franchise would have wanted, however, it was quite the contrary. The game ended up being praised by critics and players alike and is hailed by many as one of the best games of all time. This amazing reception and praise naturally made Capcom think that this is what people wanted from the Resident Evil series and that action was the way of the future. Since then, Capcom had released Resident Evil 5 and 6 with this idea in mind. However, this time the games ended up getting a very negative reception due to their focus on action over horror. This later ended up making Capcom bring back the horror aspect for Resident Evil 7. However, it is not unlikely to think that at the time of Umbrella Corp's development, there was still some hope left at Capcom to revive and capitalize on the more action-craving audience. The second angle to view this from is to have a look at where the gaming market was during this time. Esports had already been around for a very long time, but now it was at an all-time peak. Games like League of Legends and CSGO were some of the most popular games in the world, and Overwatch had just been released, taking the gaming market by storm. Esports was for the first time getting mainstream, being broadcasted on cable TV, and there was even talks about making it part of the Olympics at one point. Capcom's Street Fighter franchise did have its own competitive scene, but they were aiming for a much larger slice of the pie. And what better way to draw people in than to attach it to one of their largest franchises? Now, detaching the game from its franchise and looking at it on its own, the game wasn't particularly good even for what it was trying to be. It was rather clear that Capcom was trying to appeal to a Western market while completely lacking understanding for what Westerners want and what makes Western games good. To make a good esports game, some things to keep in mind are good balancing and strict rules that apply to every match. These being aspects that Umbrella Corp fails at. The game is built like a slow-paced tactical cover shooter, but the movement speed is completely busted. It has some of the fastest prone movement that I've ever seen, making moving around the map while completely proning one of the most effective strategies of the game. The running speed while having your melee weapon out is also incredibly fast. So fast in fact that you can be sitting behind cover and an enemy player can run up to you with a melee weapon and take you down faster than you are able to shoot them down with your gun. This makes for an experience where you are punished for playing in the intended way, and the only viable strategy for success is to go against every tactic and mechanic that the game wants you to use. So, in conclusion, it is no wonder that Umbrella Corp failed. It offered nothing for fans of Resident Evil, feeling more like a slap in the face than anything. It also offered nothing to fans of esports, with its unbalanced mechanic and clunky gameplay making serious competitive play practically impossible. But after all, the absolute failure of this game was probably for the best for the franchise, forcing Capcom to bring future installments much more in line with what the fans wanted, seeing great success in doing so. So let's just leave this mess of a game in the past, as a distant, unpleasant memory, and hope that Capcom never attempts anything like this ever again.